So you're thinking about buying a home and you're wondering, should I choose a gated or a house in a gated community, or should I buy a standalone unit? What is there to know about both options so far as buying a house in Ghana is concerned? What would it mean for me if I buy a house in a gated community? Or what would it mean for me if I buy a standalone property? Stay with me because you do not want to miss any bit of this video. I'll give you different scenarios that I have had to work with from my experience as a property consultant, just so it helps you make an informed decision so far as your house purchase is concerned. And so let's get into the first scenario. Scenario number one has to do with the frequent traveler. Are you someone who travels a lot? If you're someone who travels a lot, okay, you do not want to think about or worry about having to bring in someone to take care of your house when you're not around, then buying into a gated community would be a better option for you. Okay, you do not want to worry about someone breaking into your house in your absence. Just want to enjoy that freedom of being able to just pack your stuff and move anytime you would want to. Can you imagine how beautiful that would be? All because you decided to buy into a gated community, because gated communities come with that extra layer of security. There's that whole sense of community security. Your neighbor alone, okay, is your extra security. Then the 24-hour security surveillance in the gated community is also a plus. You have surveillance systems all throughout a lot of the gated communities that I sell. Well-planned gated communities, okay, surveillance system all around, that sense of community. Nobody gets to trespass your property in your absence. You also have this well-planned maintenance systems in gated communities to ensure that even in your absence, your gated community is clean, your house is clean for you. There are some well-planned gated communities that you even have that option of just calling in to ensure that your house is clean for you anytime you're coming around and stuff like that. And so if you're someone who travels a lot, then you would want to consider buying into a gated community. Second scenario, or the second point to take into consideration, has to do with your budget. Okay, if you're someone who just started working, you've saved some money to buy your first house, but you're not financially stable now to pay for the extra costs that come with staying in a gated community, because it comes with extra security surveillance, social amenities, and all of the things that gated communities come with, then please, you'd want to consider buying a standalone unit, okay, given your financial situation. Or if you're working with a small budget, then you would want to consider buying a standalone unit. Gated communities come with all of these amenities, extra amenities that demand that you pay monthly fees to take care of. Okay, so if you're not ready for all of that, then please, you would want to consider buying into a standalone unit. I've had clients who would prefer to own their home, outright, and handle their own security, handle their own everything. If you're that person, then a standalone property, gives you that flexibility, because you're not boxed into having to pay all of these monthly charges here and then. So please, if you're someone who would prefer that option, that freedom, that flexibility that comes with being on your own, then please consider buying a standalone home. Just buy into a secure environment. And if you need options, just get in touch with me and I would get you sorted. Third scenario has to do with whether you're a family person. Okay, if you're someone or you're a couple, you've just had kids, they're a bit hard hearing. Okay, so you're concerned anytime they step out of the house, and please, you would want to consider buying into a gated community, because some of these hard hearing kids, when you buy into the gated community, it takes off that burden of having to constantly worry anytime they step out. Anytime you hear the door open, you're worried, because if you're not careful, they would ride a bicycle somewhere you least expected them to. And so when you're buying into a gated community, it comes with this, organized streets, designated play area. Some have kids playground, tennis court, basketball court, swimming pool, where kids can go play with their other kids in the same gated community. Okay, so they can make friends within the gated community, so they're not forced to move out. They can't even move out because of the security, mounting the gate and all of that. And so if you're in the kitchen cooking or doing something, you do not have to constantly worry or panic anytime your kid steps out, because they're just around. They haven't gone that far. Okay. And so again, particularly when they're young, they're very small and you have the finances and you can afford it, then why not consider buying into a gated community? Fourth scenario has to do with whether you're an investor. If you're someone who's looking to buy the house to rent, then you may want to consider buying into a gated community, because the gated community comes with all of these amenities: the swimming pool, the tennis court, the kids playground, the basketball court, yes, in some cases a golf course and all of that. If you're someone who's buying to make some income, okay, you're buying it for investment purposes, you're buying to rent out long term or short term, Airbnb and all of that, then you may want to consider buying into a gated community, just so your tenants would find your property a lot more attractive. Okay, and often such units attract higher paying renters. If you're two friends, okay, and you buy two properties opposite each other, one happens to be in a gated unit, the other happens to be a standalone unit, all in the same community. In fact, the only thing separating both units is just a road. Okay, the friend who buys in the gated community is more likely to earn a lot higher than the friend who buys opposite um, their friend. I mean, the one who buys a standalone unit, because gated communities, due to all of the amenities they come with a lot higher rents than you would find with a stand-alone unit. Often, too, people like to buy into more secure environment, particularly when they're renting. And so, if they're buying, they definitely would want to buy into the gated community than they would rent the gated community than they would rent the standalone unit. So that's one thing you would want to, take into consideration. So weigh your options very well, particularly when you're an investor. You want to put your money at the right place. Now, the fifth scenario, the fifth factor you may want to take into consideration on whether has to do with your independence. Okay, there's some people who are independent buyers, people who want their freedom and their control over their property. They're people who, do not want to be burdened with having to pay for renovations, pay for maintenance, landscaping. They're people who want to do all of these things as and when they're ready. And so, if you're that kind of person, then definitely you'd want to consider buying into a stand-alone unit, because yeah, it's your own house. And so even if the whole place is weedy, nobody would come pressure you to do your landscape or weed around you or ensure your garden is clean and all of that. This is not what you find in a gated community. In a gated community, there are routine maintenance that they often undertake, some quarterly, some monthly, to ensure that the entire community is clean, spotless clean. And so, if you're someone who would want your freedom, a lot more flexibility when it comes to stuff like this, particularly with maintenance, then please, you would want to consider buying a stand-alone unit. You can decide to do anything, as at when you would want to without any restrictions at all. And so weigh these two options when it comes to buying your unit. Okay, so 5 scenarios so far. The first one has to do with whether you travel a lot. If you travel a lot, buy a gated community. The second has to do with your budget. Yeah, if you're not ready to pay for the extra fees, buy a gated. No, buy a standalone unit. The third factor I gave had to do with the family. Yeah, if you're someone who's a family, you're a family person, a couple, then you would want to consider buying a gated unit. Plus, the other points as well. So, here's where I wrap up. In all of this, you would want to weigh your options, see where you fall when so far as these scenarios and options and factors are concerned, just so it helps you make that informed decision so far as your buying of a home is concerned. My name is Sophia Fuswa. It's always an honor coming your way. Please, if this is the first time you're watching me, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. You do not want to miss any of the subsequent videos that my team is cooking for you. And so please do subscribe just so you do not miss any of our videos. I'll see you in my next video. But before you go, you may want to consider watching this video up here on the very latest tour we did of this unit in East Legon. And I'll see you. Bye.